Hi guys, and thank you once again for giving this video a chance. If you are new to this channel, then please, before we start, can I ask that you get your fingertip ready and hit that like and subscribe button. And to my returning subscribers, thank you, and happy to see you back on here. So now let's just sit back and get into it. Today's true crime video will be on Stanley Tookie Williams. He was an American gang member who co-founded and led the Crips gang in Los Angeles. Let's look at the early years of Tookie's life. So Tookie was born on December 29th, 1953 in New Orleans, Louisiana. His father reportedly abandoned the family when Tookie was just a year old. In 1959, he's believed to have moved in with his mother to Los Angeles, California. The pair reportedly settled in the city's south central region. Now, as Tookie's mother worked several jobs to support them, Tookie was reportedly a latchkey kid. This is a child who basically returns home to an empty house after school, or that they are often left at home alone with no supervision because their parents are away at work. Tookie would often return home from school and be the only one in the house. Now, given that he was often at home alone with no supervision, it has been reported that he would often engage in mischievous activities on the streets. Tookie himself said that he recalled that as a child he would hang out in abandoned houses around his neighborhood, where he would watch while majority of the adults get drunk. They would abuse drugs, they would gamble, they would engage in dog fights. So basically this is what he was growing up around, because he didn't have the adult supervision. Be out there on the street seeing what the adults are getting up to. Tookie said that after the adults will finish the dog fighting, they would make the children fight each other, including himself. So he began to participate in these street fights regularly as a child, where adults would bet on him and would give him part of the proceeds. And obviously seeing the adults get excited about him fighting with other children and often being the one to win, coming up stronger, that would only just heighten your desire to engage in these type of activities. It is reported that he was often the target of older bullies and street thugs in his neighborhood, and by the age of 12, Tookie reportedly started to carry switchblade in order to protect himself. Now, by this time, he had gained a reputation around the south central west side as a vicious street fighter. Tookie was expelled from his high school and was reportedly blackballed by several other high schools in the area for fighting, and eventually began doing stints in really neighborhood. Apologies. But yeah, so he began to get taken into juvie quite a lot. These are youth detention centers. So a brief summary now. He's grown up in a household with no adult supervision. He's having to surround himself with other kids on the streets. He's beginning to admire the street lifestyle. He's getting rewarded for engaging in violent activities by adults who should have been, supervising him and guiding him, but they weren't. Now we're going to discuss some of the gang activities that he got involved with. It is reported that in the 1960s, juvenile crimes had increased in the South Central area as older gangs had disbanded to join the Black Panther movement, most notably as part of the Black Panther Party. Initially, this was to protect black people from police brutality and corruption in the Los Angeles Police Department. Increasingly, violent youth gangs formed in their place, which Tookie initially despised as predatory, but because of his vicious and willingness to fight older youths, he earned the respect of many gangsters on the west side. These gangs were mostly small-time neighborhood cliques that operated independently from each other, and therefore leadership was not chosen but determined naturally. So at the age of 15, Tookie was invited to a small West Side clique after he befriended a local teenager known as Donald, but his street name was Doc or Sweetback Archie. So Donald Archie
also known as Doc or Sweetback. So Tookie soon earned the clique's respect after beating up one of their members for insulting his mother. Again, he's being rewarded for violence. Tookie became the unofficial leader of the cliques as his violent reputation began to spread across South Central. In 1969, at this time Tookie was 16 years old, he was arrested in Inglewood for car theft and was sent to Los Angeles Juvenile Hall. Whilst he was there at this detention center, it is reported that so Tookie was introduced to Olympic weightlifting by the facility gym coach, and this experience will spark an interest in bodybuilding. So by his release from custody in 1971, age 17, Tookie was physically bigger and stronger. According to him, upon his release from custody, the review board asked him what he planned to do after being released, to which he replied, being the leader of the biggest gang in the world. Shortly after his release from prison, Tookie was approached by Raymond Washington. So once he was released from custody, this is when Tookie was then approached by Raymond Washington at a new high school. So they both shared a mutual friend who then introduced each other, and it is reported that the friend had informed Washington of Tookie's toughness and his willingness to fight members of larger, more established street gangs such as the LA Brims and the Chain Gang. Now, according to Tookie, he said that what struck him about Washington was that besides being incredibly muscular, he and his cohort were dressed similar to Tookie and his clique. Both groups appeared to be wearing leather jackets with starched Levi jeans as suspenders. Washington was from South Central's East Side, where he was a prominent gangster similar to Tookie. And you can just imagine both groups being, like having that close connection in violence, being respected amongst their peers. Naturally, they would just pounce off each other, given the close connections. By this point now, they both proposed that they use their influence in their respective regions to form a larger Crips street gang. So we've seen how the Crips all came along. Like, the Crips is known as one of the most vicious, violent groups out there. So now they're still out there. They're still known and still feared by many. This group was formed by Tookie and Raymond. That they both proposed that they create this gang initially was to eliminate all street gangs. The plan was for them to join together, to come together as one group, so that they can basically, obviously, two tough groups becoming one, that's only going to make them stronger. And by this way, they can go ahead and just eliminate the smaller groups around them. And Tookie, in fact, actually said, "We started out, at least my intent was to, in a sense, address all the so-called neighboring gangs in the area, and to put, in a sense, I thought, I can cleanse the neighborhood of all these, marauding gangs." But I was totally wrong. And eventually we morphed into the monster we were addressing. So Tookie states that he founded the Crips not with the intention of eliminating other gangs, but to create a force powerful enough to protect local black people from racism, corruption, and brutality at the hands of the police. Now, at the time of the Crips' initial formation, there were only 3 Crips sets: Washington's East Side Crips, later called East Coast Crips. So Tookie formed the West Side Crips using his own influence, having befriended so many clique leaders and street thugs on the West Side. Washington, Tookie, and Thomas went on an aggressive and violent recruitment campaign throughout the black ghettos of Los Angeles, where they challenged the leaders of each gang to one-on-one street fights. Now, the process resulted in most gangs agreeing to join the Crips, and they were converted from small independent cliques into subgroups. So it's like you've got the toughest from Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D, etc. They end up fighting each other, and then at the end, whoever comes on top is the one that that is basically picked to join the Crips. So now the Crips quickly became the biggest street gang in South Central by both numbers and territory. However, numerous gangs still resisted losing their independence. These holdout gangs formed a similar alliance to combat the Crips, influenced by branding themselves as the Bloods. Now to this day, you hear about Crips and Blood, they don't go with each other. So those individuals who did not want to lose their reputation, their groups, they chose not to join Tookie's group, and as a result ended up formulating their own rivalry. So the Bloods now became a rivalry group and would become their fiercest rivals. Tookie's former rivals, the LA Brims and the Chain Gang, joined the Blood Alliance and became the Brims and the Inglewood Family Bloods respectively. As the leader of the West Side Crips, Tookie did become what one would say the prototype of the new wave of Los Angeles gang members that would engage in random acts of violence against rival gang members and innocent people alike. Tookie and his best friend Curtis Buddha would noticeably participate in these activities, striking fear into both street criminals and the residents of South Central. Tookie's violent act became legendary in South Los Angeles, as on numerous occasions, criminal charges brought against him ended in disarray, and prosecutors were unable to convict him due to lack of evidence, and mostly due to people not wanting to, give evidence against him. Come on, this guy is well known around the area, well known within the whole region, we should say. So you can only imagine people's anticipation in going against someone like Tookie. So soon after the foundation of the Crips, other leaders were reportedly either murdered or incarcerated, leaving Tookie to become, he was then regarded as the leader. And in 1974, Raymond Washington was arrested for second-degree robbery, which he served 5 years in prison. Raymond was soon murdered after his release from prison on February 23rd, 1973. Curtis, also known as Buddha, who was in fact Tookie's best friend, was shot to death in South Central following a petty argument. Mac Thomas was also murdered under mysterious circumstances in the mid-1970s. Tookie began to live an ironic double life where he would basically work in a legal job as an anti-gang youth counselor in Compton, while also serving as the overboss for one of the largest gangs in Los Angeles. Just the irony here, can you imagine? This guy is supposed to be guiding youths, encouraging them to desist from gangs activities, to turn their lives around, not be easily influenced by these people. Meanwhile, he is at the top of the chain. Look, because I'm sure that he was getting paid for this job, so you can imagine him getting paid to stop the gang violence, encourage these people not to engage in such activities, all the while he's profiting from it because he's at the top of the chain. So he would work as a counselor and would in fact study sociology at Compton College during working hours. Then he would spend his free time participating in numerous violent attacks against the Bloods. So in 1974, Tookie was actually he was wounded following a drive-by shooting whilst he was sitting at the front of his house. The shooting was committed by members of the Bloods who shot at Tookie from their car as he was letting his dog out for a walk in the evening. Attempting to avoid getting hit, he basically dived down to the ground and was hoping that he can avoid the bullets of the guns. But unfortunately, he got shot in both his legs, and he was told by doctors that he would never walk again. However, after nearly a year of long process of physical rehabilitation and an intense workout regime, he ultimately regained his ability to walk. And you can imagine now, he's done all this vicious crimes, he's been so violent towards others, he's now been hit, he's been told that, look, you're never going to walk again. Now someone like that, I can only imagine what must have run through his head when he was being told that news. But then again, given that he has displayed that he's a fighter and he's not someone who gives up easily, he clearly wasn't going to let that message resonate. He did regain his ability and was able to walk. After the shooting, Tookie reportedly redeveloped a substance abuse problem when he began smoking angel dust, and it's reportedly it causes hallucination basically, and distorted perception of sounds and violent behavior. Just to go back, in his early teens, he reportedly did dabble in street drugs. This was around the age of 12, and as a preteen, he befriended a neighborhood pimp who in return for performing errands for him would reward Tookie with money and drugs such as marijuana. So his personal life began to unravel. His maternal grandmother, with whom he was very close to, did in fact die in 1976. He lost his counseling job in 1977 after being implicated in a robbery that was committed by two youths from a group home that he supervised. He was denied an opportunity to compete in an amateur bodybuilding contest after discovered that he was a gang leader. He would later appear in 1970s variety show called The Gong Show, where he performed a pose down routine. Eventually, his gangster lifestyle was beginning to take a mental toll on him, which included a brief stay in a psychiatric ward of a hospital after he experienced a bad trip while high on PCP. Now, with each of these setbacks, Tookie is believed to have increasingly found himself using more drugs and would support his drug habit by intimidating and robbing drug dealers in the South Central area. Now, you're probably wondering, how did he manage to get through all the years with all these activities, all these violence against not only other criminals but to innocent bystanders in the neighborhood who feared him so much that they wouldn't even give evidence, so the police couldn't proceed to really take any actions. 1981. Now, this is when he was convicted of four counts of murder. Reportedly was committed in 2 of 3 separate incidents. Tookie always maintained his innocence. However, subsequent court reviews concluded that there was no compelling reason to grant a retrial. The prosecution stated that Tookie met with a man identified in court document only as Darryl on a Tuesday evening, February 28, 1979. Tookie introduced Darryl to friends of his, Alfred, also known as Blackie, and to Bernard Whitey Trudeau. Short time after the initial meeting, it is reported that Darryl was driving brown station wagon, accompanied by Tookie, drove to the home of James Garrett. Tookie frequently stayed and kept some possession of Garrett's at home, including a shotgun. And after about 10 minutes inside, Tookie returned with the shotgun. Tookie, Darryl, and Coward then went to the home of Tony Sims in Pomona, where they discussed possible locations to obtain money through robbery. Afterwards, they went to another residence where Tookie left the others and returned with a 22 caliber pistol and placed in the station wagon. Darryl and Tookie entered the station wagon. Coward and Sims entered another vehicle and then embarked on the freeway. The first incident reportedly occurred at a nearby stop-and-go supermarket where Darryl and Sims, at the request of Tookie, entered the store with the apparent intention of robbing it. Darryl carrying the pistol, which Tookie had deposited in the station wagon earlier, and also had a rifle in the trunk of the car, along with 2 semi-automatic handguns. The clerk at the shop and go, Johnny Garcia, had just finished mopping the floor when he observed the station wagon and the 4 men at the door to the market. 2 of the men entered the market and 1 of the men went down an aisle while the other approached Garcia asking for a cigarette. Garcia said that he gave the man a cigarette, which he lit for him. However, after approximately 2 to 4 minutes, the men left the market without carrying out the planned robbery. The prosecution stated that next Coward and Sims followed Tookie and Darryl to the 7-Eleven. The store clerk, which was a 26-year-old Albert Louis Owens, was sweeping the store's parking lot at 7:42 p.m. When Darrell and Sims entered the 7-Eleven, Owens put the broom and dustpan he was using on the hood of his car and entered the store to serve them, and was followed by Tookie and Coward. As Darrell and Sims walked to the counter area to take money from the cash register, Tookie walked behind Owens, pulled the shotgun from under his jacket and told Owens to shut up and keep walking. While pointing the shotgun at Owens' back, Tookie directed him to the back of the storage room and ordered him to lie down. Coward said that the next he heard shot and glass breaking. This was followed by 2 more shots. Tookie had shot at a security monitor and then killed Owens, shooting him twice in the back point blank range as he laid storage room floor. Like, can you just imagine, like, thinking, well, hoping and praying that you're going to come out of this alive. This man is directing you, you're complying, you're doing whatever it is that they're asking you to do, only for them to not even give a thought, but just to end your life just like that. The next incident occurred at a motel in South Central Los Angeles, which was run by a 76-year-old Yenyi Yang and his wife, who was 63 years old, and their daughter, 43-year-old Yuxing Yang Ling, and their son Robert. The Yangs were immigrants from Taiwan, and Yuxing had recently joined them in the United States to run the hotel. According to prosecutors, at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning on March 11, 1979, Tookie entered the Brookhaven motel lobby and then broke down the door that led to the private office. Inside the office, Tookie shot and killed Yenyi, Shang, and Yuxing after he emptied the cash register and fled the scene. It's like this guy was just doing things without really giving much thought. He's so ingrained in this type of lifestyle that taking a life clearly did not seem to be a big issue for him. Robert, asleep with his wife in the bedroom at the motel, was awakened by the sound of somebody breaking down the door to the motel's office. Shortly thereafter, he heard a female scream, followed by gunshots. Robert entered the motel office and found that his mother, his sister, and his father had all been shot, and the cash register was empty. The forensic psychologist testified that Yenyi Yang suffered 2 close-range shotgun wounds, one to his left arm and abdomen, and one to lower left chest. Shang also received 2 close-range wounds, one to the tailbone and another to the front of the abdomen. Yuxing Yang Ling was shot once in the upper left face area at a distance of a few feet. Now, witnesses testified that Tookie referred to the victims in conversations with friends as Buddha heads. Don't know what he meant by that. So Tookie was convicted in 1981 of all 4 murders with aggravating circumstances on each count of felony murder, as well as multiple murder in the case of Brookhaven event. The jury also convicted Tookie of robbery in both cases and found that he personally used a firearm in the commission of the crimes. The jury returned a verdict of guilty, and the judge did in fact sentence Tookie to death. And from the beginning of his sentence, Tookie had actually maintained his innocence regarding the 4 murders. Notice how he's not denied any of the previous activities. However, he was adamant that he was innocent for these 4 murders, and he did allege that there had been some misconduct, there had been misleading evidence, ineffective assistance of counsel. He claimed that there were biased jury selection and the misuse of jailhouse and government informants. So Tookie claimed that the police found not a shred of tangible evidence. There were no fingerprints, no crime scenes or bloody boot prints, and that they didn't match, that whatever they found did not match his boots nor eyewitnesses. Even the shotgun shells found conveniently at each crime scene reportedly didn't match the shotgun shells that he owned. However, the prosecution's firearms expert, he testified during the trial that the shotgun shell recovered from The motel crime scene had in fact matched test shells from the shotgun owned by Tookie. There were reportedly no second examiners who could verify these findings, and the defense claimed that his expert methodology was junk science at best. Tookie's gun was found in the home of a couple with whom he occasionally stayed. According to the district attorney, the husband was undergoing sentencing for receiving stolen properties and tried for extortion. Tookie's lawyers have claimed that the district attorney squashed the murder investigation into exchange for their testimony. The 2 shells recovered from the 7-Eleven crime scene were consistent with shells fired from this gun, with no exclusionary markings. The shell recovered from the Brookhaven motel crime scene was conclusively matched to Tookie's weapon, to the exclusion of all other firearms. Now, critics did claim that although Tookie had renounced gangs and apologized for the role he played in co-founding the Crips, he did continue to associate with Crip members in prison. However, when contacted about his alleged ongoing gang activity, Los Angeles Police Department spokeswoman April Harden said there were no evidence of his gang leadership. Opponents also pointed out that Tookie received a significant amount of money from outside sources. They stated that people who appreciate Tookie's work sent him money. It's as simple as that, said Tookie's spokeswoman. The prosecution had removed 3 black people from serving as jurors in Tookie's trial. His lawyers claimed that he was convicted by a jury that had no African Americans, 1 Latino, 1 Filipino American, and 10 white Americans. The district attorney provided proof, however, in the form of a death certificate and affidavit of another juror. Number 12 was black. The defense responded that, contrary to the affidavit, Mr. Larkin did not appear black. So despite all this, maintaining his innocence and, being sentenced to a custodial sentence, in the early stages of his time in custody, Tookie would not be described as a model prisoner. He did in fact spend 6 years in solitary confinement in the late 1980s for multiple assaults on guards and fellow inmates. According to a classification report filings by his lawyer during the clemency procedures, he had no violations since that time. In October 1988, Tookie was stabbed in the neck and was seriously injured by another inmate. So for years, Tookie had made several appeals for his conviction and had in fact been to state court. He had filed petition in federal courts. In 2001, he further made an appeal. Again, this was denied. In 2002, another one. Again, it was denied. So all of his appeals were basically denied. There were several made. And in late 2005, there was a campaign. It was urging the then governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to grant clemency for Tookie in consideration of his work as an anti-gang activist, with thousands of people signing online petitions. The argument was that they weren't asking for him to be released into society, but rather for him to remain in custody, but for him to spend life in prison. The sole basis of this argument was that he was now a renounced gang member and was in fact doing something positive. He was writing books on ways to encourage younger people to deflect from the lifestyle that he chose. The path that he chose was encouraging them to lead a more positive lifestyle, to get into businesses, to refrain from peer pressure, all the things that he himself were not doing. He was basically now using the opportunity to talk to his younger selves, trying to get through to the younger groups to say, look, guys, learn from me, don't do what I done, say no to gang violence, etc. All this request for clemency, executive clemency, in fact, nothing was actually granted. It did not proceed, did it not go through. You had, you know, big time celebrities getting involved. Like, you had the likes of Snoop Dogg getting involved. There were quite a few people from the hip hop community fighting and pleading for his execution to not take place. The clemency petition, mainly focused on Tookie's redemption and his rehabilitation, as opposed to his actual claim of innocence. I think they didn't want to focus on that because the bottom line is he had done some dreadful things. He had done some extremely disturbing and very violent and brutal activities, total disregard for life, and, you know, did not grant nobody mercy. So for someone like him to now be professing innocence, that's like the last thing that you want in terms of asking for them to take off the death penalty. So they didn't focus on any of that. They, in some way, in my view, I feel like they were looking at this as, look, you did do quite a lot of these things. There's no denying here. Just because you didn't get convicted for them, it don't mean that it didn't happen. You did engage in some of these activities. So we're not going to act like you're this innocent guy who's been put in prison for the wrong reasons. We're not going to do that. We are in fact going to talk about your growth. We are in fact going to focus on you being rehabilitated, you having a new change in attitude, you know, you wanting to support younger generations to not take the path that you have taken. However, on December 8th, 2008, Governor Schwarzenegger held a clemency hearing at a 1-hour closed-door meeting where a crowd consisted of both supporters of Tookie and proponents of capital punishment congregated outside the California state capitol. The governor basically described his decision whether to grant clemency, stated the following. He said, "The toughest thing when you are governor, dealing with someone's life." While the clemency petition was pending before the governor, Tookie also filed further appeals in the court. So, on November 30th, 2005, the California Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, refused to reopen his case. On December 11, 2005, the Supreme Court denied his request for a stay of execution. Supporters of Tookie also made another plea directly to the governor to stay the execution. During this period, the media, as I said earlier, the community, organizations, the relatives of the victims were speaking out. In mid-November 2005, talk show host John and Ken of the John and Ken Show had in fact started Tookie Must Die for killing 4 innocent people hour on their show daily until the execution. In the hour, they interviewed advocates of both sides of the issue and expressed their support of the impending execution. Many anti-death penalty and civil rights organizations across the country also organized activist campaigns to stop execution, including campaign to end the death penalty. The NAACP and others, Tookie's friend, co-author and political collaborator, also helped. Celebrities, as I said earlier as well, also joined to stop the execution. The main request was basically to ask for the death sentence to be changed to life without parole. And so although he had quite a few supporters, rooting for, pleading for him to be given life without parole, you also had some people from the victim side, who also commented. On December 8th, 2005, Laura Owens, who was the stepmother of Albert Owens, one of the victims, made a statement expressing her opinions of Tookie. She said the following: "I think he is the same cold-blooded killer that he was then, and he would be now if he had the opportunity again." Her daughters, who were 8 and 5 years old when their father was murdered, also opposed clemency and recalled that they were shocked when they had learned that their father's murderer was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. That's the thing, Tookie did get, nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work. He had written quite a lot of books about, as I said, ways to deter the younger generation from joining gangs and encouraging them to desist and not give in to peer pressure and stuff like that. So his accolades were there, but quite a lot of people were at the same time also quite disgusted by this. By contrast, however, on December 9th 2005, Linda Owens, Albert Owens' widow, did issue a statement in support of Tookie's effort to bring an end to gang violence and his call for peace between gangs. Because, again, as I said, something that he had helped to start, he was now requesting for people to, to give up that lifestyle. He was asking for peace. He didn't want no more, he felt like, there had been enough damage, even though he's the one that was one of the main people to have caused it, but now in his much older age, he's now thinking, look, we need to change, we need to have a different view of life, there need to be peace in this land, etc, etc. So as I was saying, so Linda Owens wanted to build upon Tookie's peace initiative. She said, I invite Mr. Williams to join me in sending a message to all communities that we should all unite in peace. This position of peace would honor my husband's memory and Mr. Williams' work. So despite all this and the debate and the request and the pleading and everything, on December 12, 2005, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger did deny clemency for Tookie. The governor cited the following. He said that the possible irregularities in Williams' trial have been thoroughly and carefully reviewed by the courts, and there is no reason to disturb the judicial decisions that uphold the jury's decisions that he is guilty of these 4 murders and should pay with his life. The basis of his request for clemency is the personal redemption Stanley Williams has experienced and the positive impact of message he sends. Yet it is impossible to separate Williams' claim of innocence from his claim of redemption. That's the thing, because you're claiming that you are innocent, but there's been redemption. So which is which? It was kind of confusing, because one minute you're saying that you're innocent, but in the same time you're saying that, like, look, you've changed, you're not this individual anymore, you have redeemed yourself, you're saying all that. So it's a bit difficult, in that sense. He further said, cumulatively, the evidence demonstrating Williams is guilty of these murders is strong and compelling. There is no reason to second guess the jury's decision of guilt or raise significant doubts or serious reservations about Williams' conviction and death sentence. Williams has written books that instruct readers to avoid the gang lifestyle and to stay out of prison. He has also tried to preach a message of gang avoidance and peacemaking. It is hard to assess the effect of such efforts in concrete terms, but the continued pervasiveness of gang violence leads one to question the efficacy of Williams' message. Again, he further said, is Williams' redemption complete and sincere, or is it just a hollow promise? Stanley Williams insists he is innocent and that he will not and should not apologize or otherwise atone for the murders of the 4 victims in this case. Without an apology and atonement for these senseless and brutal killings, there can be no redemption. In this case, the one thing that would be the clearest indication of complete remorse and full redemption is the one thing Williams will not do. Wow. After all that, clemency being denied, on December 13th, 2015, 16 days away from his 52nd birthday, after exhausting all forms of appeal, Tookie was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison. He was the 12th person to be executed by the state of California following the 1976 Supreme Court decision of Gregg versus Georgia. Tookie provided no last words to the prison warden, but in an interview hours before the execution, these are some of the stuff he said. He said, "My lack of fear of this barbaric methodology of death, I rely upon my faith. This is pure faith and predicted on my redemption. So therefore, I just stand strong and continue to tell you, your audience, in the world that I am innocent. And yes, I have been a wretched person, but I have redeemed myself. And I say to you and all those who can listen and will listen that redemption is tailor-made for the wretched. And that's what I used to be. That's what I would like the world to remember me. That's how I would like my legacy to be remembered, as a redemptive transition. Whether others choose to believe that I have redeemed myself or not, I worry not, because I know, and God knows, and you can believe that all of the youths that I continue to help, they know too. So with that, I am grateful. I say to you and everyone else, God bless. So take care." So after all that, there are still some people out there who to this day still maintain that Tookie was in fact innocent for these 4 murders, and they have taken it upon themselves to try to get some form of justice for him. There's been people that have said that they are going to prove Tookie's innocence, and that when they do, they're going to show that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is in fact a cold-blooded murderer. I don't really know about that, but yeah, so that's what people are still, some people still hold these views. And following his death, his body was actually laid out for viewing on December 19th 2005, which actually drew about 2,000 mourners, so this was a big case, because this is someone who, as I said, he was one of the co-founders of one of the biggest, most notoriously known violent group of individuals who caused a lot of issues for those in their community, a lot of unsettlement, did all that. His younger years, very disturbing. Those people who were victims of his behavior, they didn't get the form of justice that they needed, because understandably they feared for their lives. They were terrified of this man and his group. So all that happened, but then at the same time, whilst he's been in custody, I get that in the beginning he didn't really make use of the time. However, towards the end of it now, he did turn his life around. He did turn, and he wasn't asking to be let out. He was in fact saying, keep me in prison, let me just do life without parole, so that I can continue to do the work that I'm doing. But I do also understand that it's very difficult to give that sort of leniency when the same individual is saying that they are innocent. Because when you're still, not unless you genuinely are innocent, but if you've done all these things, if your life, for most part of your life, you have engaged in this type of activities, you have been this notorious, it's very difficult for you not to take ownership for some of this behavior, yet expect people to accept that you have changed. Because it's like, what are you saying what have you changed from? What are you remorseful for? Are you genuinely remorseful? That is where we will leave this video, guys. It is a long one, and I appreciate you for staying tuned to watch till the end. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I do plan on releasing a video a lot more frequently now. But so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.